am amazed and touched. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very surprised to see you boys here, especially since this is a woman's asylum, but you're welcome. Are you a reporter, sir? Oh, well, you're most welcome to be here. I do not abide by reporters. They have not been very kind to me over the years. Before you came, I was just sitting here thinking about the twisted road that has brought me to this place. I'm waiting for my son Robert to pick me up and escort me to my sister Elizabeth's. How ironic that Robert is the one that saw to it that I was placed in this asylum to begin with. He organized the court case that condemned me and said that I was insane. And now he is the one that must take me to my sister's so that I can escape this place. I was thinking about my childhood. You know, I was born in December of 1818, the same year that our flag was adopted by the Congress. I think of all the boys who died under that flag to keep our nation whole. I was very fortunate. I was born in Lexington, Kentucky, to a wealthy father, Robert Smith. 2 weeks after my mother died, my father began to court Betsy Humphreys. Is it any wonder that Grandmother Parker did not like him? In the end, there were 14 of us children. Mammy Sally raised us mostly. She was a jewel of a black mammy, and we loved her. But we knew she was our property, and so she only had so much control over our behavior. Now, you know, Betsy didn't like me very much. She called me the devil's spawn and a wicked child. And that worked for me because I was sent away to boarding school. I would be gone all week long and come home on weekends, and I had 10 years of formal education, more than most boys. I was a well-educated woman, and it was there during a cotillion that I met Mr. Lincoln. I was actually talking to Mr. Douglas, one of my suitors. Now, Mr. Douglas, he had asked me to marry him, but I said, Mr. Douglas, I am meant to be Mrs. President, and I will only marry a man who will become President of these United States. And he said, why, Miss Todd, I will be President one day. And I said, well, that may be true, Mr. Douglas, but I will not be Mrs. President under your name. Anyway, at that cotillion, I saw this tall, lanky man coming towards me, and I knew who he was because he was the new law partner of my cousin. He was 6'4", and I was 5'2", and he often said we were the long and short of it, which is true enough. At any rate, he came and he bowed and he said, why, Miss Todd, I would like to dance with you in the worst possible way. And we danced. And at the end I said, why, Mr. Lincoln, you did in fact dance with me in the worst possible way. I think I embarrassed him some. But not too much, because he came calling shortly after that. Now, Mr. Douglas always brought red roses when he came to call, but red roses are nice, and we had a garden full right outside. Mr. Lincoln brought me bonbons, and I much prefer bonbons. We sat for an hour on the settee that first time, and we talked about Whig politics and poetry and literature. And this man that most people saw as being a rustic was in fact a very deep and intellectual man. It's hard to tell because his grammar was so bad and because he told such off-color stories. Now, the men liked it, but in polite society, he was outrageous. But I knew that this man could be polished and groomed to become president. And I know just the woman to do that polishing, and I hooked my wagon to his star right then and there. We became engaged, and then just a few days before our wedding, he came to me and said he didn't love me anymore. I was devastated. I'm a difficult woman, though, I will admit that. And I have rages and tempers, and I was not an easy woman to live with. I remember one time, Mr. Lincoln was lying on the floor in one of his reveries that you could hardly take him out of. And it was cold, bitter cold, and the fires needed to be stoked. And I said, Mr. Lincoln, you need to stoke the fire. Yeah, he didn't get up. And again I said, Mr. Lincoln, you need to stoke the fire. And he didn't get up. And a third time I said, well, Mr. Lincoln, the babies are freezing, you need to stoke the fire. Well, he didn't get up. So I picked up a piece of cordwood and hit him across the face. He stoked the fire. And I don't think I broke his nose. It was just that mustard plaster was on there for a couple of days. I remember the time he was reading and pulling little Tad in a wagon when he was a baby. And Tad fell out into the dirt, and Mr. Lincoln just went right on reading. And I found my baby in the dirt, and I picked him up and followed Mr. Lincoln into town and gave him a tongue lashing they're still talking about in Springfield. No, I wasn't an easy woman to live with, but Mr. Lincoln loved me. And he always forgave me. But I knew the importance of appearances. I had learned this back in Lexington all those years ago. I knew that if we did not look powerful and healthy and strong to our friends in Europe, they might turn against us. But about a year into the term, Willie and Tad got typhoid. Probably from the water I piped in from the Potomac. They were both so sick. And Willie died. I cannot tell you the grief of losing a child and then another. I went into mourning for 2 years, but it was never the same. However, the day my life stopped was the day that Mr. Lincoln was murdered.